Hey, Diana, did you know being effective at your job is simple?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I'm your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my co-host, Diana Berry, my COO and right hand. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Not much. I heard you had a guest podcaster last week.
Yes, but
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I tried to get her to take your job, but she said no. Who would want that job?
Yeah, exactly. Even after 31 years.
Who would want to put up with me on a weekly basis? I know. So, Diana, I understand from our pre-recording conversation that you're a little stressed out this morning.
Yep. Well, but I'm also very excited. We got a new hire in this week. So it's definitely going to help both our office manager and me. And I'm just excited. But sometimes things just throw you a curveball and you just got to roll with them.
So apparently our new health insurance premiums for the year, our quotes came in and they're like shockingly through the roof.
That's the danger of telling you things before I've had time to look into them. But yeah, unsurprisingly, health insurance is going up.
Okay, well, let's just cut it for everybody and just say we're going to be healthy this year and no insurance claims.
Yep, exactly. So.
All right. So what are we talking about today?
Well, something that probably I could use a reminder of, just how to be effective at what I do, because obviously with a new employee that's supposed to help. I think he will be incredible at that. It's just right now there's still a lot of things like.
All right, so who did we hire?
We hired a gentleman named Conrad to be our HR and client relationship coordinator. And he's doing an amazing things. I've been able to say, hey, will you please call this person back and do this and take a look at this today. Our insurance.
Oh, we're letting him call people back already?
Already.
Oh, I got a list for him to call this.
No, sir. No, sir. He can't help you. But I think that I could probably use a refresher from Drucker's book, The Effective Executive, which is what we're talking about today.
So I am amazed that we are some 30 podcasts in and we are just getting around to Peter Drucker. Because Peter Drucker is sort of one of the fathers, the founding fathers, if you will, of business management.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I'm recalling correctly, he passed away back in 2005, but he lived a good long life. So I mean, he started way back, and most of his research and work started in the 50s and 60s. He's written over 30-something books. My favorite, the one I like, and I was just pulling it out. I was going to re-listen to it starting next week. I kind of run out of books to listen to. It's called The Effective Executive. And it is basically his overview of a lot of his previous works, kind of put in more layman's fashion, less academic and more practical, useful information on modern management theories. And one of the things that Drucker did is he coined the term knowledge worker,
mm-hmm.
which may seem obvious to us today, but back in the 50s, 60s, and so forth, most jobs in America were manufacturing jobs. People were working with their hands. They weren't working with their minds. Well, guess what? Today, as we sit here in 2025, and this has been in the news a lot lately with, Trump tariffs and him trying to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S., which I don't think is ever going to happen. We are now a knowledge-based society. Practically, that's not a fair way to say it. Most workers in America today are knowledge workers. We work with our minds. And as attorneys, I think, that's kind of obvious to us. I mean, quite frankly, you could chop off my arms, you could chop off my legs, as long as you didn't chop out my brain and my tongue, I can still work just fine. That's what we do as lawyers. We are knowledge workers. And Drucker's core argument is, and which I found reassuring, is that effectiveness is not an inherent trait. It is a trait that people can learn, and it is a learnable trait. And thank God, because I know for a fact in my younger days, in my several, probably 2-3 decades of life, I was not a very effective person in terms of time management, in terms of focus management, in terms of getting things done. I chased my tail a lot. But over time, when I actually learned that, hey, effectiveness is a thing, effectiveness can be learned, and I started focusing on it, I started looking for resources on it, I feel over time, I just became more and more effective. And the more effective I came, the better I was at my job, the more money I made, the more money I kept, the more streamlined and efficient the organization that I run became. So I think that's sort of one of the keys that Drucker talks about, and kind of one of the things I want to impart within this podcast is you can get better at this stuff, and it's not that hard. Let me rephrase that. It's simple to do. It's not easy to do, but the concepts are simple.
Just like most things, it takes habit and consistency. And I think that one of the things that, when you mentioned Conrad, is reminding me of is the fact that efficiency changes throughout your career, right? So when I was a baby attorney, there was just the grind of just learning how to be a lawyer, right? Law school doesn't teach you how to be a lawyer. I don't know what it teaches you, but it certainly doesn't teach you how to do the practice of law.
It doesn't teach you about the business side of law,
Exactly.
for sure.
And then in my 30s, it was, just really learning a lot more, just how to generally be a manager and a leader. But now in my 40s, it's completely different again now, as I have someone I directly manage, and all of the efficiency changes with each, job and each position.
As we love to say, delegate and elevate.
Delegate and elevate, but I think that it's not, again, one of those things that we've said this multiple times about multiple different concepts, and I think that efficiency is another one of those where you can just kind of set it and forget it. It has to evolve with you, your positions, where you are in the firm, and I think a lot of our listeners, as we've talked about, are either in your position or, trying to get where you are, and so as you either come out of that prison of being in the grind and trying to become that visionary for your firm, you have to develop a new level of efficiency, or you become an arsonist.
Yeah, or you become an arsonist. Yes, exactly. So, Drucker kind of makes the point of the importance of self-discipline and time management to maximize your impact on your organization. That's
I'm really excited.
What he keeps focusing on.
I'm really excited about talking about that one. So I think he mentions, is it 5 principles throughout the book? Is that right?
Yes, I believe I counted 5 if I'm remembering correctly.
And then, so time management's the first one, right?
Yeah. So one of the key things he kind of came out with, he separated the concept of management from the concept of leadership. And a lot of times people conflate those two things.
Yes.
And the way he described it is management is about doing things right, about doing things correctly. Whereas leadership is about doing the right things. And I think that's a key thing, a key way that you distinguish between the concept of just management and the concept of leadership. It's like, and if you combine those two things, really the concept is doing the right things at the right time, at the right place, the right way. It's kind of the way I've always thought about it. Because you can be doing things correctly, but you're still doing the wrong things. For example, we had this exercise with our leadership team, our mid-level managers, as I call the sergeants of the Army. And we had them each write down what are the 3 most important things about, functions of your job, and they all have a dozen things that they do, but what are the 3 most important things that they do? We had them list them out, and we kind of went through them, and I think we all came to an agreement. Yes, we all agreed that these are the 3 most important things. And then the next question is like, So do you start your day looking at these three most important things? And we found a lot of them did not. A lot of them started on number 12 or number 11 of their dozen most important things. And so we tried to bring them back around and refocus them to make them more effective, is focus on the three most important things first thing of the day, and then let everything else fall into place.
I think they're very susceptible. I met with one of your sergeants yesterday, and scope creep is a very real thing working for you, but also probably for everybody else that's, listening. And, one of the things that one of your sergeants asked was, well, do I need to make time for this request? And I was like, okay, what are your three things? And she told me, okay, where does this fit? She goes, it doesn't. I said, then just adjust expectations. Say, hey, listen, I can't get it to this week, maybe next week, but I just be very realistic about that. And I think that you have to do that, and especially in a growing firm. Also, back to one of your comments, I think there's a fallacy of that if I'm a manager, I'm automatically a leader. And those are two very different skill sets. When we teach management skills, we don't teach leadership skills. Those are two very different ideas. And unfortunately, I think, especially now where I am at my career, I've seen a lot of people kind of do that Peter principle where they kind of just top out at being a manager. And that's okay too. But when you think that automatically you're a leader just because you manage people, I think that's very much a dangerous fallacy.
There's two different, totally different skill sets. So talking about leaders, what are the challenges as a law firm leader? There's some basic things that as a leader you have to make decisions on. Number one, you have to allocate resources. You have to manage your client base, your client expectation from a holistic level, and you have to worry about, strategic planning. And the one thing I really think about a lot, and what I didn't realize when I became a leader of the firm, that my biggest job is resource allocation.
What do you mean by that?
So, good question. So if you think of the basic functions of a business, you have to market the firm. You have to have an intake department, a sales department that converts the marketing leads into actual clients. Then you have to have operations. You actually have to produce what you've promised the client that you're going to do. And then you have to have the back office side, the finance, the management, the HR, functions that support the rest of the firm. And all of that requires resource allocation. You have to allocate time. You have to allocate money. You have to allocate people. And there are limited resources. We were just talking about the healthcare bill, that we're sitting here facing, being a price increase this year. That eats up resources. So now we've eaten up some resources because our health insurance bill for the firm, through our group plan is going to go up. So that money has to come from somewhere. Either we have to make more money, which may or may not happen, or we have to take that money from some other pot of money. Does that money come out of the marketing budget? Does it come out of the overhead budget? Where does that money come from? Same thing when I look at how many people would it be to have the best intake department going. Maybe I need 15 people, so we're a little overstaffed, to compensate for vacations or absences or just maybe a high volume of calls on a particular day. However, do we really have the money, the budget to do that? Do we have the people to do that? Maybe I need to move some of those people in a different department. So you're always making these small little trade-offs when you're allocating resources. Mm-hmm. And I found never in a million years in law school or when I first started to practice would I realize that most of my time would be spent making decisions about how to allocate resources.
Yeah, because you're making decisions as a business owner, not as a lawyer.
Right, yeah. Right. I'm absolutely making decisions based as a business owner. Yeah.
So in our next segment, we're going to talk more specifically about the book.
We're going to talk a little bit about the book. We're going to talk about Drucker's 5 key principles to being an effective executive.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
Drucker's first principle is time management, and we've talked about time management quite a bit. I have taught classes on time management. I have taught my people on my concepts of time management. And I think the key point here is, from the book, is that until we can manage time, we can manage nothing else. Time is your most precious resource. We talked about allocation of resources earlier. Time you can never get back. Money, you can always make more money, but you can't ever make more time. So, I think when you talk about being effective with your time, sometimes people make that trade-off. They will spend a lot of time to save a little bit of money. Whereas I think to be more effective, if you spent a little bit of money to save a lot of time, in the end, you'd be better off. And I think that's the concept. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. So one of the things that I always focus on especially when I have new employees come in, is we focus on time management. I know you had some thoughts about that.
I think it's hard as you evolve, again, from being a doer in your early career to being a manager to being a leader or an executive, which is Drucker's this is what we're talking about, being an executive. And as a doer, that's all you do, is you're just doing your tasks. And that's very easy when you're managing your time. Like, you're usually 8 to 5 or 9 to whatever you're doing. You're just doing your tasks. Nobody trusts you with anything more. But when you're promoted up to being a manager and you're doing less, and now it's just more kind of preparing reports in terms of just more amorphous things instead of just make this client call, then it becomes you're learning different time management skills. But most especially when you're an executive, you and I, as we've talked about on this podcast before, we spend an hour, or at least a Friday sometime on before the week starts, we look at our next week.
Right.
We are pretty habitual about that. I mean, I think that is one thing.
Sunday night, I'm always expecting to get a flurry of emails from you because I know you're looking at the week.
I try not to do that anymore.
I don't mind. I really don't. I actually I worry about you when I don't get the emails.
You, Marc.
I'm afraid that maybe you've been kidnapped or something.
Well,
because I do the same thing on Sunday night.
Would you pay the ransom, Marc?
Depending. I negotiate a deal.
That's
Yeah.
Well, but I do think, it's helpful for me to see, the overlaps in my schedule, like, okay, well, now I'm unfortunately double booked here. It helps me with meal planning, honestly. Like, I had 5 business lunches this week, thankfully, but if I don't know, then I can figure out,
means you need to correspondingly schedule 5 workouts to work those business lunches.
I did, sir. Thank you very much for that judgmental remark.
I'm not saying anything, but I'm just saying something. But
anyway, so what we're talking about, though, is time management, not what Diana's workout. So, but I think that's how it's taking time, being committed to making time before your week starts, so that when the week happens, you're not caught up with what's happening in my schedule. You can really focus on, the more strategic things that I'm doing at my level now. Training, that's very much a big part of my schedule that I'm having to add in that wasn't previously there. And if I'm caught up on, okay, well, what's happening with my calendar, that's the least of my worries. And I think that one of the things from Drucker's book was that the effective executive doesn't start out with their tasks. They start out with their time. And that's really, to me, basic, but also something I have to relearn at every level of my career.
Practically speaking, how I do it is I start the week. I use my Atticus planner because, number one, it's free. So there, I say it's free. It's free with your paid tuition, which is not free at all.
In that way, mine is much cheaper.
And it has a weekly planner, and I start with the top 10 things I want to accomplish for the week. And to do that, I go back and look at my 90-day plan. And like, out of my 90-day plan, what are the 10 things I want to accomplish this week? And I write that down on Sunday night. Then I start blasting out emails and looking at your emails, because I will naturally. And then, by the way, I also look at the week as a whole to see what's scheduled for the week. And I'm like, all right, what can I reasonably accomplish in the week given the schedule that has been forced upon me? And the first thing I do is I start like, well, I don't like that one. I'm going to cancel that meeting, or I'm going to move that. And I start Sunday night, I start flipping out emails to various people about, if necessary, I don't always do it, but if necessary, to change my schedule around. And then I start working through my week. What are the top 10 things I want to knock out? And then I plan the Monday. Planning Monday is always very important, because that sort of sets the tone for the
strong. So yeah, start
out strong. Like I say, Monday we start out very optimistic. By Thursday, our soul has been crushed, but that's okay. Just a practical thing. And here's the point I would like to make. It's not just about you doing it. You need to impart these habits and skills upon your people. Mm-hmm. So I have tried to train my lawyers to do a similar thing. And we've tried to train our leadership team, our mid-level management team, who are non-lawyers, the same way. Because for me to be effective, I need them to be effective. It's not just about me. It's about getting this effectiveness habit down through your organization as sort of a cultural linchpin, if you will.
No, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that we've also talked about this is that if you feel more in control of your schedule, you're less reactive to things that happen. So, and then you feel more proactive, more in control of what's going to happen to you that week. And that hopefully lessens any potential, or lessens your ability to burn out, your receptiveness to burnout.
Once upon a time, we used to actually bonus people based on them submitting their weekly plans, their weekly time plans. We kind of got away from that because we were looking at other metrics. But at one point, hopefully that sort of instilled a habit amongst them, because I know they still do it.
I think that it might be one of those things to go back to basics on, just because we have such a different group of team members. But every time that you grow at another level, it's kind of back to basics would be a good one. I liked that you reminded me when you taught this to me that, it's not about 100%. We're trying to get to 80%, Diana. And that allowed me to be like, okay, well, it's not set in stone. It's very much, it's fluid. Yeah. Don't forget to let it be that. What's the second concept, Marc?
So choosing what to contribute to the organization. Now, I think this is from the leader position, but I think, again, this is a habit that we can instill down throughout the firm. What are your basic functions? Like I said, one of my basic functions is resource allocation. That is something I think about a lot. Another basic function I have is developing other leaders, mentoring my people to become leaders in their own right. That is a big function. At the same time, you have to figure out, I'm kind of jumping down to number 3 here, but what is not part of your job, and try to stay out of that.
Oh, no, for sure. I think that's an important one, is staying in.
Keep your nose out of things that you should keep your nose out of.
Yeah, trying to stay in your own lane.
Stop being an arsonist.
I mean, that's Marc. But so I think that this one was hard for me to understand. But I think that understanding how your role fits into the firm's purpose is important. If you don't know how what you do every day contributes to the firm's vision and to the firm's purpose, then I think it's going to be very hard, and you're just not going to really know what you're doing. You're going to be unsettled. And so I think it's very incumbent upon leaders, executives, to make sure that everyone knows exactly how they contribute and what they do to make sure that either the file is ready for hearing, or that that they do customer service. And then as executives, I think one of the things that's hard to make that transition is now you're not focusing again on work product, or you're not focusing on the discovery that has to go out. It's, what impact am I making to the organization? And I think that can be hard because, a lot of the stuff that you do, the second M, I think that you've mentioned before, the mentoring, the mentoring of your attorneys, there's no real deliverable there.
So I'm going
to
kind of equate it to, I've talked in the past about time management is really focus management. What I think Drucker really did here is he kind of split the two out, because we talked about number one, time management. Two, what are we choosing to contribute to an organization? I think that's really focus management.
Yeah.
So what are you focusing on? What are the tasks within your job, within the firm, that moves the needle forward? So we all have things, and I think we just talked about it in the first segment, that when we talked about the 3 things that we wanted our mid-level managers to focus on at the beginning of their day. Not all 12 things that is in their job description, but the 3 most important things, or 2 or 4, whatever the number is. But the most important things that they have to keep their focus on. So that's what I would call number 2. It's really about focus management.
Yep, and I really liked where you were going with the making strengths productive, which is Drucker's third point.
So we're jumping over to the third point, making strengths productive, which I think the way he describes it is the effective executive builds on strengths, their own strengths, the strengths of supervisors, colleagues, subordinates, and on the strengths in the situation. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but for example, you and I. So we are the yin and the yang of this organization. I focus on vision. I focus on leadership. I focus on mentoring.
Big picture.
I focus on the big picture because that's what I'm good at. Those are my strengths. What are my weaknesses? I would say probably execution, organizational skill. Accountability. Ooh, yeah, you just stuck the knife right in me with that one. Those are where I'm weak. Well, hence that's the reason I have you, because those are your strengths.
And I think that we like to stay in each other's own lane. I think that one of the things that, especially that you're at where your career is now, you have that visionary role with the big relationships. We've talked a lot about how when we walk into conferences, everybody knows you. And I mean, they may know me just because I'm like that random person you mentioned on the podcast, but really like everybody knows you. And so you're very much in charge of those big relationships, whether that's in our mass tort arena or leveraging new technology. That's very much in your lane, and I'm very good with that.
Yes, and I'm very good with you dealing with all of that other stuff.
Have you ever taken the StrengthsFinder 2.0 by Gallup? You know what I'm talking about?
It sounds familiar, and so I probably have, but I can't remember it, honestly.
I really like it. I encourage it. And so the whole thesis behind that book, though, was that, everyone likes to focus on their weaknesses just because it's good to know your blind spots. Like we were just talking about, it's good to know we can't hold people accountable. It's good to know that I can't walk into a room and everyone's going to suddenly start pitching me mass tort ideas. But for the most part, people do better when they know what their strengths are and when they play to those. And so Gallup has provided a test called the StrengthsFinder. I think it's 2.0 at this point, just so people can be very aware that these are what we consider your top 5 based on this test, and these are what your top 5 weaknesses are. Right. So very cool resource out there.
So it's really, I think that the end point is it's easier from just a day-to-day perspective is focus on your strengths, delegate your weaknesses.
Yep.
Very simple concept.
Absolutely.
Which admittedly can be tough if you're in a small organization or a solo where you don't really have anybody to delegate to. I would encourage this. You don't necessarily always have to delegate to somebody inside your organization.
Mm-hmm.
There are people out there who, for a small fee or a large fee, I don't know, will sometimes take these tasks off of you if you want to. Just for example, today we were talking about a simple task of keying in a bunch of data, and we're like, nobody wants to do that. That sounds awful, and nobody has the time to do it. I'm like, can we not outsource that?
Our EOS implementer runs her own business. So her business is coaching and a few other things, the EOS implementation, obviously. And she outsources a lot of her office admin work.
She has a virtual assistant
in the Philippines, and who checks in with us and very periodically. So I'm sure there's a cadence somewhere in the procedure manual that she has established for her. She helps set up orders, even though she's in the Philippines, our lunch orders for our meetings. So, I mean, absolutely. I think it's important, especially in this global economy, to utilize the resources where you can.
So number 4, and I think we've alluded to this a little bit, setting the right priorities,
I love this one.
which kind of goes back to the focus management. What the book said, results are gained by exploiting opportunities, not by solving problems. So where are your opportunities that you can exploit? Again, this is what I love this one because it's such big picture thinking. Stop worrying about your problems. Start there thinking about opportunities. For example, we're moving into the field of elder law. Matter of fact, we just launched this past week. So we're no longer moving into the field of elder law. We are in the field of elder law. It's an opportunity. Now, it created a bunch of problems, but I didn't focus so much on the problems. I focused more on the opportunity. We'll solve the problems when they come, and they do come. And every time we figured out a way to solve it, or we've deferred it, or we've moved around it. So never let a roadblock stop you. Just figure out a way to go around it. So I really like this concept because it's a very visionary concept. It fits within, fits my smell test.
Really, I like it because I think it's very operational.
See, wow, different lenses, and we come to the same conclusions.
So here's why I think it's very operational. I think that if you don't know what your priorities are, then you're never going to be effective at what you do, regardless of whether you're an executive or not. Obviously, we're gearing this conversation towards executives, but I think about attorneys that spread themselves too thin because they're not able to focus. So it's clearly building, right? So one of the things I think about how beautiful this concept is that Drucker, basically says that you need to eliminate activities that don't lead to meaningful contributions. So we just talked about, do you know how you contribute to this organization? And then now we're talking about, are those contributions in your priorities?
In other words, do they move the needle?
Absolutely. But
you can do a lot of things that don't move the needle. You make you feel good, but does it move the needle?
Absolutely. Which is why I think that this is where I see a lot sometimes the whirlwind. We talk a lot about the whirlwind, which is, I think, a very tactical concept. A lot of our attorneys are just caught up in, it's just our attorneys. Sorry, attorneys, if you listen.
None of our attorneys listen to this podcast.
Oh, good. Not just our attorneys. Any attorney that we see, some concepts that we see when we talk to our Atticusins. I'm very excited about that coming up.
Oh, yeah. We're going to Atticus this next week.
Exactly.
Getting back on the road.
They complain about this. I just have no time. I'm just constantly spread too thin. I'm, working more hours than I ever have. And I feel like I'm making less money. You don't have your priorities straight. That's why I feel it's very tactical.
Number 5, the last one, decision making. The importance of effective decision making in a law firm setting. So one has to make a decision when a condition is likely to degenerate if nothing is done. So in other words, if the status quo will lead to disaster, hence time to make a decision.
Well, I think that's what we get paid to do, right? As executives, leaders, is to make the unpopular, the tough call. If it were easy, hopefully it wouldn't have made it to our desk.
Well, that's the basic function of a lawyer in general, is to help clients make decisions on a path forward. So we've been trained for this. This should be the easiest thing for us to do because this is what we have spent our whole career training for, is how to analyze facts and make decisions based off those facts.
And I would say absolutely, and I'm not picking on the high I's in the world, so sorry, high I listeners. I think that sometimes you have to be willing, though, to make the unpopular call with your team members. It's really easy when opposing counsel doesn't like you. It may be maybe not feel good when the judge doesn't like you, but you also just that judge doesn't like anybody, so it's okay. It's a lot harder when the people you see every single day, or that you have to make an unpopular call with a teammate that you're going to have to see the next day on the way to the bathroom or in the parking lot. And I think that that's where executives, people trying to transition into that leadership bubble, can fail.
So one of the things I see here is paralysis by analysis. And what that really boils down to is people don't want to make decisions until they feel they have 100% of the information in front of them. And the reality is we'll likely never have 100% of the information in front of us. So we've got to get to a point where, like in a jury trial, the standard is more likely than not. We have to get to, the best we're ever going to get to in most decisions is it more likely or not this is the best path forward. We're never going to get to that, beyond a reasonable doubt, because that requires too much information that is typically not available to us in a timely manner.
That's a great way to put it. Attorneys get stuck on the wrong standard.
You get stuck on the wrong standard
when you're trying to make a decision.
Sometimes you just have to, you have to get to a point where you're comfortable with the decision and you realize that if I make the wrong decision, it's not fatal.
Yep. You have to get comfortable with the unknown. And I think that transitioning again from being just a manager to a leader / executive to, get to Drucker's point, that's where I've seen people fail.
Kind of goes back to the good to great, fire rifle shots, not cannonballs. It's okay to make a mistake as long as it's not a fatal mistake, as long as it's a small mistake that you can back out of. And so frequently most of our decisions that we have to make on a daily basis are going to be those types of decisions. So you just kind of have to make them. You have to go with them. You have to play them out. And, generally speaking, you're probably making a decision, even a wrong decision, is better than simply doing nothing at all, because doing nothing at all is basically the same as going backwards.
Yep, and hopefully you have good decision makers in your firm that know the difference between the rifle shots and the cannonballs and can differentiate between those.
And we make all sorts of decisions all the time that, like, I'll go to marketing. We try things all the time that cost some money. They don't cost extraordinary amounts of money, and frequently they fail. And that's okay, because now we've learned something. We learned that this didn't work. So now we move on to something else. We didn't lose our shirts over the whole deal. We made a small reasonable test at it, took a shot. I have a situation right now. I've spent almost $60,000 on an experiment with a particular vendor. It is not working out. Was it worth the test? Sure, don't want to lose $60,000, but it's not fatal. We might have gotten a case or two out of it, so we'll probably make half of our money back.
So now that you mentioned that, Marc, I want to talk to you about this new technology I want.
Oh, no. We're not going.
I didn't realize we had. No, I'm kidding.
No, but we do. I mean, we that's actually kind of a large version. We typically don't piss away $60,000 on something that doesn't work. Typically, it's more like $5,000 or $6,000 or something like that. Something that's not that big of a deal. But that $60,000 was a lot of money.
Well, but you know what? It's like you said, that was a good decision. You made a decision.
I think, and I still stand by the decision. I would have made the same decision over and over again. It didn't work, but I would have made the same decision over.
So how are we gonna? I guess we're gonna wrap up.
Well, when we come back, we are going to wrap up, talk about some of our particular key insights, on how this book has affected us and how we think it can make you money. I'm Marc Whitehead, a lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks so much for tuning into the Successful Barrister podcast. We have a blast creating it, and I hope you find it helpful. If our chats have sparked your interest, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. That's Marc spelled with a C. And join the Successful Barrister newsletter. Even better, let's hop on a call. I'd love to chat about how we can collaborate, share ideas, or just catch up. Okay, so right before we went to break, I made the comment that we're going to come back with some ideas about how to make your money, and I got just a total glare from Diana. Like, how could you make that promise?
Yeah, I did probably, but I didn't glare. There's video evidence. I did not glare.
You did too. You gave me a look. So like now we're under pressure because now that we made a promise, now we got to come up with something.
I have something. I don't know if it's going to guarantee to make you money, but I think that it will.
So basically, in recap here, we have the 5 things that Drucker says to make an effective executive. We're going to convert that into an effective leader of a law firm. Time management, choosing what to contribute to the organization, what I would phrase as focus management, making your strengths productive, setting the right priorities, and I would frame it as good decision making. Or way I would like to frame it, and this is how you make money, is be willing to take risks in your decision making. Mm-hmm. All right, you had a thought. I want to let you go.
I don't know. I want to hear more about being willing to take risks.
So how you make money. We are in the risk business. We, now I would say, as a contingency fee firm, we take risks every time we sign on a client. Okay. We take risks every time we begin some new marketing initiative, particularly the ones that cost money, and they typically all cost money. We take risks every time that we start a new practice area within the firm. We take risks every time we hire a new employee. We're always taking risks. Now, I understand that if you're in an hourly practice or maybe a flat fee practice, your risk profile might be slightly different than a contingency fee firm, but all the rest still applies. You're still taking risks every time you make any decision. How you really make money in the practice of law, I think, is that you are willing to take bigger and bigger and bigger risks. And you build up to that over time. Like I said, fire rifle shots, then cannonballs. I will say for us, marketing initiatives, we spend a lot of money on different marketing initiatives. And when we find one that works, then we really spend a lot of money on it. We blow it out. We run with the opportunity that's been presented. And not all opportunities are there forever. I mean, I remember in a former lifetime, we used to make a ton of money off of Yellow Page advertising. That went away. Then I know a lot of lawyers who made a lot of money on LSAs, local service ads, when they first came out on Google, and that lasted for a year or two with the PI law firms. And then that sort of got watered down over time. There's always opportunities out there, but you have to seize the opportunity. We had an opportunity to partner with another law firm way back in around 08, 09 to really develop a national disability insurance practice. I could have been conservative. I could have said no, but no, I went for it. I took a big risk. Now, there was, a cushion. If that would have failed, it wouldn't have been fatal. But I took a big risk on that. And I mean, our practice is, 10 times what it was back then because of that risk. So, but everything has to be a calculated risk. You don't bet the farm. I guess you could bet the farm. I know some master tort lawyers who have bet the farm. Mm-hmm. And some of them made it and some of them didn't. Some of them did not make it at all. I wouldn't advise betting the farm. Let me rephrase it that way. I wouldn't advise betting the farm if you're in it for the long term. If you plan on being around for the next 30 years, make those calculated risks, but take the risks. That's how I would say you take all of this and really make some money.
Interestingly enough, we came to the same conclusion, but I think about it globally saying by investing in your people, because we are a services business, regardless of whether you're hourly or contingency like we are. We're a services business, and so you're going to be investing in your people, whether that's promoting a paralegal to a team leader, someone to maybe an office manager, and eventually a COO at some point of your career, of your firm's growth. You're going to be investing in people. And unfortunately, it's not a calculated risk because these are people. They're irrational. You have stories that just... Melanie, I don't know if she shared the story about, you just brought her papers or when she showed up one day and she just said, okay, these are all my expenses. I don't know what it was, but it was enough to give me like hives and stuff when she told me what happened or what used to happen. Or when the employee that you had, can I tell that one where it just cashed all your checks while you were on a cruise or something? One employee.
She paid all the bills when I was on a cruise and there was no money to back it up.
That's what happened.
That's what the problem was. So I came back very poor from the cruise.
And not because of the cruise. And one employee can do that regardless of your firm size. And so if you don't invest in your people and coach them up as they move from that level of being a paralegal to a team lead to either, an office manager or to a COO, you're going to be betting a lot. You're going to be betting on the farm unknowingly. So make sure you spend time on these 5 principles and really coach up your people when you move them up. If you see them not doing it, it's really a good reminder. We, not just with our sergeants, but I think we need to go back to this and make our attorneys read this book and do another book club with them, because I think it's only getting worse. They get very set in their ways. And then we have unintentionally kind of, given them the Peter principle. They will never be able to be more than what they are now if we don't hold them accountable to stricter standards. And that's on us.
So your answer versus my answer is a perfect demonstration of the differences in the way we think. The difference, I'm thinking of opportunities. I'm thinking of marketing. Here's how we can grow. And you're just thinking of like, we got to control our people. We got to make sure everybody gets in line.
Invest in our people.
In our people. So
that is exact. I said invest, not control. But if, control is a byproduct, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, trust me. I know you are. I know you are.
I do think we should get some feedback from our listeners, though. Let us know who's right, Marc or me. Please let us know.
All right. So if you have any comments about this or any episode, shoot me an email at my email address, marc@marcwhitehead.com. Marc is spelled with a C. I've gotten a few of you out there who've sent me a few emails with comments about the podcast. All of them so far have been positive, which is great. But, I would love to have some negative comments, and then we could we could talk about them on air.
Yep.
That would be fun.
Be negative about Marc. Don't
just
be negative about me.
Just send me. You know who you are, my friends out there who like to give me shit. Just send me an email. I'll trust me. I'll get it on air.
Good.
All right. With that, I'm getting the high sign that we are out of time. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Marc.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us at your favorite podcast distribution point, which is a new phrase I've learned. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, spread the word. Tell your friends. And visit us at successfulbarrister.com. And be sure to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.